Welcome to SADTU Online Television. I'm your host, Nomusa Tembi, in Soweto at Avalon Cemetery, where we are commemorating the 29th anniversary of the death of SACP stalwart, Comrade Slovo. With me, Comrade Alex Mashilo, the spokesperson of the SACP, to explain briefly what the significance of this day.
Thank you so much. This day is so important, not only for the SACP, but for South Africa. In what way? We are in 2024 now, January, but we come from 1910 and all the decades and centuries before 1910. The centuries during which the African was expropriated and oppressed, deprived of any access to participation in the government affairs of his or her own land. Now, we are here to commemorate the death of the stalwart, amongst the stalwarts who fought for our liberation, and by which, so far in terms of phases, we mean the democratic dispensation that we achieved in 1994 and the massive social advances that followed thereafter. This victory against the apartheid regime in 1994 did not mark an end to our struggle. It only marked a new beginning. The working class is still exploited in the factories, in the mines, on the roads, in the transport industry, in the studios, in the communication and media industries, in agriculture, in whatever industry you may think about. The workers are not in charge of the economy. They are not owning anything in the economy, yet they are the ones who produce the wealth appropriated by the capitalist bosses. Until we invert that equation, there is no social emancipation. We can make improvements like access to education, access to health, access to the courts, which is still not, the courts are still not yet open. If you think about the amount of funds that attorneys and advocates need to represent you, because no one is allowed to represent themselves in the courts. So to be represented in the courts, you pay a lot of money. The system that provides people access to legal representation is not so effective, and there are many people who avoid it. So our struggle is too far towards achieving its objectives of equality, objectives of non-racialism, objectives of non-sexism. But we are here to celebrate our achievements and the contribution of revolutionaries like Slovo in our struggle for liberation, and to strengthen ourselves to move forward with the cause of the struggle.
Comrade Slovo was quite crucial as a liberation fighter and also in negotiations. We remember his role during CODESA negotiations. What would you say, what would you like to say to him as SACP, as South Africa, 29 years into this democracy?
Slovo took part in the negotiations for the transition we achieved in 1994 and in the armed struggle, as well as in what Frederick Engels calls the theoretical struggle. That is the intellectual part of the struggle. So he was active on all the fronts of the struggle. However, during the CODESA negotiations, our comrades who led the SACP and participated in the team that he led together with Chris Hani informed us that there was a discussion which was not put forward openly regarding the compromises that had to be made just for our people to achieve a democratic dispensation as an entry point towards further transformations, towards social emancipation. That discussion was the sunset clause. So clauses. Joe Slovo played an instrumental role in saying, hi, come on, we are putting this discussion openly on the table for our negotiating team to consider and for comrades to consult with the masses, because the negotiations were not taking place in isolation from mass mobilization on the ground. It were interventions like that one which unlocked the negotiations. But now we need to move beyond the negotiated settlement, because the negotiated settlement was not a cul-de-sac.
And what would you say from those negotiations and where we are? Have we moved? Have we made any progress?
No, there were social advances. I mean, you meet people from other African countries. You meet people from other continents, Asia and Latin America. You compare the progress in access to education that the South African Democratic Dispensation under our movement has delivered. We are unmatched. I mean, in some countries, people pay school fees from substandard A or grade 0 or grade R up to matric and at university. People drop out at primary school, at secondary school. They never reach the TVET college system. They never reach the university. Compare that to the massive progress that we have made in education in South Africa. There are important advances such as the access our movement has opened to education and the expansion of health that we don't seem to be appreciating. I mean, you think about the millions of people who benefited from what you call RDP houses. In many countries, that is not done. People are required to pay. That's why globally, you have this thing that in Brazil they call the favelas. In other countries, they call shanty towns. In here, we call squatter camps. We have tried our best. However, the truth is, with every advance that we have implemented, we need to defend that advance, build on it and improve quality. For example, we need to move from the provision of the type of houses that we are giving to our people to building better quality houses. And in the future, as the revolution advances, we need to increase the size of these houses. And we need to return back to where we have begun once we know that we have covered a sufficient number of people. So there is a lot of work that needs to be done. There are areas where our transition has performed badly. For example, as I talk to you now, 11.7 million South Africans are unemployed, both those who are actively looking for work and those who have looked for work and have given up looking for work. That is not good. The levels of poverty, despite the fact that we have had massive rollout of social grants, assisting over 17 million people and therefore cushioning against poverty. The fact of the matter is that there is still poverty. So here it goes. We cannot follow the same policies that we have followed for the past 30 years, failing to create employment for the millions of unemployed people and hope that we are going to create employment. So we need a policy change. That's the message of the SACP on this occasion, as we remember Slovo today.
We need a policy change.
We need a policy change. And that policy change has to encompass two things. It has to be a change in content and a change in direction. If it does not change in direction, you can change in direction and keep the same content. You are not going to arrive where you want. So we need a policy change. I mean, in 1996, the government imposed this neoliberal economic policy called GEAR, Growth, Employment and Redistribution in short. It failed to create employment. It failed to achieve its growth targets. It failed to achieve the type of redistribution that should eliminate inequality and poverty. That neoliberal policy, since that year, our unemployment rate has been above 20%. I mean, if you think thoroughly, if you are serious about the revolution, you must ask yourself, why did we follow this type of a policy trajectory for over 30 years? Yet the unemployment rate is consistently above 20%. And has worsened. You cannot follow the same thing again and think that you are going to achieve different outcomes. No, only a fool can do that.
The country will be going into national general elections in a few months' time. What is the SACP's views to the upcoming elections? Will the elections bring any change? Will you know that you are talking about in terms of policy and direction and content?
Our message to our people is that let us not convert election into outsourcing of power. We cannot go and vote and then go back and sit at home. Voting must come with continuing the struggle to hold accountable those who have elected. Sometimes individuals like me, but I'm still young, I must say so, they are older people. Sometimes during pre-election preparations, you have access to the people who will be voted. You have access to them. Then they listen to you. Immediately they get to power. The formula changes around. They no longer want to listen to you. They know everything. And at the end of the term of office, things haven't changed like unemployment. It still continues as it is. When you speak, it's like, this is an uneducated follower, Alex Mashilo, what is this? But unemployment levels still remain very high. Many people who are in positions of power will not tolerate to live under the conditions where the masses live today. They won't. And when the masses speak, it's like the masses are ill-informed. They won't tolerate it themselves.